Welcome to the Entrepreneur Stories podcast. Jonathan Herps is your host. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial founders, business owners, and CEOs. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Hi there, and welcome again to my podcast. A bit different this time. I'm really proud that we've now done. This is episode number 101, and there's a couple of things coming up. That some changes that I've made with us going forward. First and foremost is we now have a new name, Entrepreneur Stories. Entrepreneur Stories of Scaling Up. So that's reflects a bit more of what we're actually doing with the podcast. Secondly, I've swapped some of the questions around and added new and taken some out. You're used to hearing a question about the pandemic. I just think we're living with that now, so I've taken that question out and added one or two more in for our guests. Thirdly, and this is an amusing part of the story. My guest today is Curt Rendall, who's the director and partner at Rendall Kelly Chartered Accountants. One of the things, and I'm going to welcome Curt in a moment, but one of the things that I've talked about on the podcast before is working on your unique ability. In other words, focusing on what you're good at and then outsourcing, delegating the rest. So the bit that I'm good at here is coming up with questions and then recording having the interview with my guests. Everything else in this podcast is outsourced. Recruiting the people we're going to speak to. The actual video editing, putting it on social media, that's all outsourced to my team. So the fun part of this podcast is that Curt is one of my old friends. He has been the tax advisor to me, my companies, and my father's companies for over 20 years. And Curt was recruited by my team to come on this podcast because he fits the description of the perfect client of mine, which is a CEO, founder, 8 to 50 staff, etc. So my team went and recruited Curt to this podcast without my knowledge, and I've had nothing to do with it. So it's like the fact that Curt is interview number 101 has had nothing to do with my invitation personally. So it's a great lesson on how things, if you've got a business that's working well, what can come out of it. So Curt, g'day, mate. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Isn't that a fun story, though? I didn't reach out to you. This was your team went and found you.
That is very interesting. Dear me, that is great.
And it's a great leadership management lesson too, if you think.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Anyway, so thank you so much. And I'm thrilled that you're number 101. There's got to be, that is a good number. That is It is. So as I said, we're changing up the question a bit. So shall we just jump in?
Yes, let's jump in.
Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and your company, Rendall Kelly Chartered Accountants.
Okay, well, look, we are a classic, firm of chartered accountants. We specialise in accounting, taxation, business services for privately owned businesses, and generally high net worth individuals. We have clients that from overseas that have operations here. We have clients from here that have operations overseas. So, look, we've been around for quite a while, and in my personal journey of even becoming a chartered accountant, of getting into that space, and then going through the different firms that I worked for. I started out working in a firm that just did purely audit work, larger corporates, that sort of thing. And after about 3 years of that, whilst it was great grounding in many ways, it just didn't, hit the buttons. And I then was referred onto a firm that specialised in insolvency work. And I did that for 3 years. And that is difficult work. You're often, dealing with very, difficult circumstances for people who have, either lost everything or their dreams have exploded, for a range of reasons. And that was very taxing, very emotionally taxing. And whilst doing that work, I was exposed to taxation. And that's piqued my interest in that side of things. So I then, after 3 years, left that firm, went to a larger firm again. And I went into their pure tax area. And I spent a number of years just doing what we call pure tax. Now, what is that? That really means just not looking at any of the other accounting issues or anything else in their world or life, just purely the application of the taxation laws to their business affairs. And I eventually found that to be, that became not so much boring, but I was drawn more to interacting with people. It was the people side of it, dealing with the owners of businesses. That I found that turned me on more than anything. Doing that sort of work, working with people, and then applying the laws, of course, but working with people was the turn on. And people mightn't associate chartered accounting with being a people business, but it is very much a people business. When you're dealing with the actual owners and the families and and there's a million human, business owners are not robots. They are human beings, and you've got to be able to, I found that interacting with them was the biggest turn on, and hence, our practice, Rendall Kelly, specialises in that, the private owners of businesses, some very large, some small, some just starting out, some from overseas, but again, always generally private businesses, not so much the public company space.
And, I've already mentioned, I know Curt very well, but, and it's interesting, Curt has not mentioned a couple of things. He was, for a long period on a director of the Australian Board of Taxation. He is an expert in this area. He's one of my most referred partners. Whenever I have a client that needs counselling, coaching, tax, structuring, Curt's my go-to guy.
Well, look, being involved with, it was very interesting. My involvement with government started when I just simply got involved with some Institute of Chartered Accountants, as it was known in those days, committees. And then all of a sudden, I found myself going to Canberra quite regularly for the Institute. And then, look, some doors opened up, and I was very involved in GST when it was coming on. Chris Jordan was the chair, who's the current Commissioner of Taxation. He was a KPMG partner then. He was chair of the New Tax System Advisory Board, and they made me deputy chair of that. So we did that for a number of years, and we're very involved with GST when it was coming in. And then eventually, when the Board of Tax was formed, they eventually got me into that, and I sat on that for 10 years. And that's a very interesting body where you are answerable to the treasurer. That's who you work for. On the board, you've got the boss of Treasury, you've got the Commissioner of Taxation, and you've got a person by the title of First Parliamentary Counsel. They are in charge of the department in Canberra that drafts all federal law. Right? They are 3 ex officios that sit on the Board of Tax. And so, they're 3 reasonably powerful people in the wonderful world of Canberra. To have them on that board brings some real credibility to the board, and then the work that's gone on by the board since its inception really has been first class, and but very demanding. It's something you do in your spare time. It's a lot of hours and a lot of reading and study. But look, it does build you as a professional. It really puts some good foundational stuff into you and keeps you on the right track, as it were. So, it's been interesting.
So let's jump in a little bit to the meat of the question. So, first question. So, if you had to start from scratch, are there any aspects of your personal or leadership development you'd prioritise as you scaled your business? What would you do differently?
Look, that's a very good question, and I've been thinking about this since you first asked me this morning. It's like, look, we're all human. We've all made mistakes. We've got, we can all do things differently and better and that sort of thing. I think, look, one of the problems we have in our area of work is the amount of study and learning that is just constant, right? It's ongoing. And so our focus is almost completely absorbed in, literally the tax law changes of this week. So it doesn't give you the time that you need to do to, that you might spend getting into some of that, very good material that you're often talking about and recommending, that really helps us to learn how to manage, how to deal as a business, treating us as a business, because we're so absorbed in look, 5 p.m. every Friday night on the dot, Thomson Reuters send me an email that tells me the tax law changes this week. That is 30 to 80 pages every Friday night at 5 p.m. And that's Easter, Christmas. It's 5 p.m. every Friday. And keeping up to date for us with the tax laws of the nation, and it's not just federal, the states have a role to play as well. That so absorbs us that we don't do, I don't think, the business stuff, the stuff that you're so good at teaching people about and helping people to grow and getting them to learn, because we are so focused on the minutiae of the wonderful of tax law that, and look, just to give you an idea, those 4 volumes there, so that's the Tax Act in all its glory. 4 volumes. That doesn't take into account the rulings, the determinations that come out weekly. I mean, so we are, kind of standing in quicksand trying to advise people on tax matters because we've got this, and even, look, when I was on the Board of Tax, I used to say to them, look, slow down, because the pollies and the bureaucrats think when they've changed the law that the job is done. No, it's beginning. We now have to absorb it. We have to apply it across our clients, so look, that's probably our greatest challenge. And in terms of, if I started from scratch today, would I have spent more time learning how to actually, run a business, treat this as a business rather than simply every client matter that lands on my desk, just focusing 100% on that and not so much worrying about the business? That's probably, I suppose, in a lot of ways been the biggest failure. And it's so tempting to just ignore that, the side of it you're trying to teach, and concentrating on our side, that's probably the biggest failing that we have, mate.
You're not alone.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I'm not. But
it's interesting, Curt. I every fortnight, so I have a couple of different types of clients, but my one-on-one CEO coaching, and in fact founder coaching, every fortnight I have a call, a 1-hour call with my clients, and the things we go through. What are their top 3 quarterly priorities, and where are they? Red, yellow, green. What 3 wins have they had in the last fortnight? Mm-hmm. What are the key 3 priority issues they've got in the business?
Yeah,
and we prioritise them 1, 2, 3. What recommendations I make and what tools I give them. Then finally, what are the 3 most important actions they need to work on to move the business forward in the next 2 weeks? and what follow-ups from me to them and them to me. And it's fascinating, so I am pushing my own.
No.
But when we focus founders and CEOs on that fortnightly rhythm and those questions, and I know that I'm going to ask them the questions in a fortnight's time, it's extraordinary how, I know you need to, I've talked a lot about the amount of, new legislation that comes in, but getting founders and CEOs focused on the business is one of the things. It's one of the most critical things there is.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge that I find.
And you're
being able to, take my vision and focus off the stuff, the laws and the application thereof to actually treating this like a business.
Yep.
That's my biggest challenge, I think.
Yes, I get that. So listen, what potential roadblocks or gaps have you had in balancing your growth, your leadership, and the growth of your business?
Yeah. Look, probably staffing is certainly currently, staffing is the biggest challenge we have. COVID has eaten people. I don't know whether they've disappeared to, but virtually every accounting firm that I speak to, and I speak to a lot of them all the time, the challenge of staff is currently our greatest challenge. We cannot find bodies. We've had one position here that we have filled 3 times in the last 12 months. And each person that's come in has been there for roughly 4 months, and had to leave. Their CVs were drafted perfectly so that when we read them, thought, no, this person, tick, 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 tick. Put them in the chair. Disaster. Just couldn't come at it. So all of the AIs and all the things that help people draft their CVs these days, when they come to sit and actually do the work, that's the problem. And so staffing, look, is our current, biggest problem that we've got is finding, people that can do it. And when, I'm not talking about somebody at a senior level here. I'm talking about, basic sort of level stuff. But it's just, look, computers, wonderful as they are, right? In the wonderful world of accounting, they have taken a lot of the skills that kids, when coming through, would learn, the very foundation blocks upon which, accounting is built. The computer does it now, not them, and so it's more difficult for them to get a lot of the basics down. It takes them longer to get the basics down because a lot of the computer systems are doing the thinking for them. So they bring a job into me and say it's finished, and I look at it, and the debtors are in credit, and the creditors are in debit balance. Just basic. It's like they can't look at a set of a trial balance and go, "Oh, that's wrong. That's right." That's because the computers crunch the numbers. The trial balance balances. So, look. Getting kids that want to do the boring stuff that needs to be done to build the foundation block on which their career is built, that's a challenge. Everybody is so instant driven, with all of this wonderful technology we've got today that is probably our biggest challenge going forward. And to, the training that we must do now, we do more training of our staff now than we have ever done in our history, because of the amount of new knowledge that has to be, and kids, when they come in and they've finished their uni and they think their degree is done, they're finished, and I go, you are just beginning. The learning, not just our game, the business learning never stops. You're a full-time student when you're in business.
Oh, absolutely. And my learning regime, Curt, you've seen.
I know.
It's really interesting. What you just highlighted is you've highlighted a bit of AI in there. And, I use AI all the time in my business. My business is essentially a knowledge business. If you ever get, my daily LinkedIn posts, which I think I put pretty good. The foundation of that is all out of ChatGPT. I come up with the question and I feed it into ChatGPT, and then I get it to write me LinkedIn posts. I get it to write me a blog post. I get it to write me a LinkedIn carousel. I get it to write SEO keywords and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It will never be more than 80% right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's absolutely an accelerator to me. But it's about that last 20%. And the same thing, and your comment about AI and resume CVs, and, very easy to write a resume now that matches the job. And, it comes back to those basic foundations of interviewing skills. And I'm finding it with a number of my clients where we're revisiting the
interviewing process, right?
And going back to basics, I use a model called top grading. Brad Smart came up with. I think I was taking you through part of it, and just things like one stage of it, threat of reference check, where we literally go back to every single boss they've had. Yeah, it's the question. Based on this, how would you rate this person out of 10? Yeah. And we asked the interviewee to rate their ex-boss as well. And we just, it's all about matching up what they're saying to what their ex-boss is. Yeah. And yes, it takes a lot longer. But, as you know, the cost of hiring the wrong people.
Well, we've had 3 goes in the last 12 months for one position, and we've had to get rid of the people every time. So the cost of that to us has been,
why don't you include me in the next interview series?
Yeah, look, I probably I will. Yeah,
coaching through.
Yeah.
So moving on, and I know the answer to this. But how do you balance your personal life with the demands of leadership and of running a business?
I married a saint.
I was about to say that as well. But I was going to say, I don't think you do.
Look, unfortunately, and certainly in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I left here at 10 o'clock last night, and it is 12 hours a day, and I'm working 6 days a week. It's just how it is. And that's with all, we've got every computer thing known to man, every bit of software, but it is a real challenge to, I suppose, and maybe I'm a bit old school, try to operate like we did 20 years ago, and try and deliver what to us is service to our clients. Even with all of the computerized help, et cetera, it's in some ways in our game like it's more challenging today just because of the amount of material and that we have to be across. It's just phenomenal, and as I say, the constant changing that goes on. Every parliament we have in Australia, federal and state, they're change factories. That's what they are. Our politicians in the Western, world, but in Australia, they love announcing changes to things because it's indicative of them doing a job at trying to fix something. But the rate of change, in fact, I wrote to the Institute of Chartered Accountants a week ago, because I chair a committee for them, looking after practices in Sydney, or chartered accountants in Sydney that are in firms of 1 to 5 partners. They put this committee together and asked me to chair it for them. And in that, I sent an email before the meeting saying, that on one day last week there were like 9 different rulings, determinations, things that were changed in one day. Now, for me to try and be across that, when a client asks us a question these days, and I'm sorry to do that a little bit, we cannot give them an answer. I have to look at, so it could have changed overnight, in some way, shape or form that's material to the client's affairs. And that's probably our biggest challenge, is managing this change that our parliaments, state and federal, just continue to invoke upon us. I mean, for a little country of 25 million people, per page of legislation, we would be we would be gold medalists in any Olympics, any bureaucratic Olympics, because and it's not just tax, I know, it's clients in every field are all, dealing with this change that is just constant,
Okay, so I'm going to nag you a bit now. I'm going to put my nagging hat on, because this is a conversation Curt and I have a lot. And, I don't think, if you don't mind it, Curt, I don't think what you're doing is healthy, as you know.
Oh, I know it's not. I know, mate. I know it's not.
For you or your family or your grandchildren.
Yeah.
And one of the things I coach is a balance between, there's no way as an entrepreneur you're ever going to have a work-life balance. There's 50.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen. And as you say, a saint of a wife, and I can hand on heart say you'll meet Santhi. I can hand on heart say it's but it was fascinating. I pushed Curt a while ago to go and stay at our beach house down the south coast, and the difference between I think it was only 4 or 5 days. You coming back versus you going away was extraordinary.
Yeah.
If you, as entrepreneurs, one of the things, it's very easy to let our business drive us.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not healthy. And when it all stops, whether you sell or whatever it might be, so I will continue to nag you and coach you to real quality.
Well, it's interesting, mate. I've had 2 clients who sold their businesses, were worth 15 odd million bucks, didn't need to worry about where the next meal was coming from for the balance of their days, and they committed suicide.
Yeah,
because they could not handle this daily. When that was gone, their void left was just. I think people that have been employees their whole lives, I think they adjust better to the change. Owners of businesses struggle more than anyone. And, one of the other challenges these days that isn't mentioned very often is the fact that we're going to live, as a general rule, till we're in our 90s. Right? When my dear old dad retired at 65, well, he was dead at 72. And back in those days, that's what happened. You had 4 or 5 years post-retirement, and then you were gone. You retire at 65 now. You've got potentially 25 years plus that you've got to not only fund, but also manage, and for people that have been owners of businesses, that is a mega challenge, is dealing with that. And look, and I've got clients now, 85 years of age, still in business, still going flat out, and they say that some that have retired say, look, if I have to hit one more golf ball, or I got to catch one more fish, right? Or, forgive the sexist nature of this comment, if they say to me, if my wife gives me one more list of jobs to do, I'm gonna, right? Then the wife grabs me and says, if you don't get him out of my hair, I'm going to kill him, right? Because they've been ships in the night for 40 years. Kids, business, life, all of a sudden, they're together all day long.
And look,
And look, these are challenges. And the challenges that aren't talked about much is post-business life.
This is why you've got to start practicing that now.
Now, yeah. But
And
I'm very happy to learn. Very happy.
one of my first challenges I have with my my coaching business practice is all about coaching you and your leadership, and coaching you and your business.
Yeah.
And and my goal is to get my clients a self-managing business that can work without them, a profitable commercial enterprise that's self-managing that can work without them, so they can take 3 months off. That is my initial goal with any of my clients.
Wow.
And we can normally manage that within 12 months.
Wow.
And it comes down to your point earlier. It's all about who, not how. It's all about having the right team around you.
Yeah.
So if these clients of yours who decide to sell the business, they should have a chat with me. They could become because I'm
absolutely. Look, they're
trying to replicate me is really bloody hard, and I look for people who've owned businesses and been successful, and also who make mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And the mistakes, you learn more from your mistakes than you ever do from your successes, really, And,
I mean, it's one of those, to me, one of those, how do you put it, signs of success is you've made more mistakes than the guy next to you.
Yeah. And I think that's spot on, mate. I really do.
So tell me, what qualities do you look for in employees, and how do you foster a positive, productive work environment?
Look, what we want is we need someone with some, a base level of intelligence. We need, and again, in the end of the accounting world that we occupy, we need people who can talk to people and interact with people. The classic, I suppose, caricature of an accountant is, the person that's a little bit boring and a bit, narrow, and so we need people we need staff who can talk to people, and that's, but with the right, basis of simple intelligence, but also then knowledge. We as a firm will build on that knowledge that they have, right? And we spend a ton of time now. I feel like I'm a professional. I feel like I'm almost a professor teaching a class of kids every day rather than, doing what I'm doing, because that's what we've had to become, is teachers, because it's just never ending. And look, if the tax, let me go the other way. If the tax rules had never changed,
we're not going back into tax, so I'm going to say.
Well, I'm just saying, if the tax rules had never changed in the last 40 years, you would know the tax rules as well as I would know today, right? So, look, if I can say this with self-interest, the constantly changing rules mean that I've got something to do every day. If the rules hadn't changed, I'd have no, you know what I mean?
Let's go back to the culture of business. How do you foster that culture?
Look, it's slow, it's steady, it's having, basic working arrangements with staff. That goes from the seat they sit on, literally, right? The quality of the seat they sit on, the desk, the environment we've created for them, the camaraderie of the team around them, so that they don't feel like they're on their own. And if they make a some little error, that the world's going to collapse upon them. I would much rather have my staff coming to me going, listen, I'm not sure about this. I think it's this, but I'm not sure. Can you help me? The know-it-alls don't last long here, because, we can't. We are a team, and we need to, and we're all learning. And, there's often times with my staff, I'll go to them and say, look, we should be doing this, that, or something a particular way. And they'll go, you can't do that anymore. And I go, what? Right. So we need a team that are taking information from all, and we run it through the team so that we've got not just my little set of eyes looking at it, we've got more than one set of eyes. So creating that inclusive culture where people know they will not get jumped on if they say, I'm not sure about this, or help me, or I'd much rather hear those words come out of their lips than the know-it-alls but they're wrong, because the consequences can be devastating to clients, expensive, et cetera, Real life can be life and death stuff, financially, literally. So, creating the culture is very important.
It's interesting you say that, Curt, because I'm looking at another screen, so I'm not trying to ignore you. I wrote a blog on this the other day. I'm not sure if it's which you could have, what you just said, you could have written the blog.
Right.
And it was about, where am I? No, I can't see it. It's about the issues of, here are the leadership red flags.
Right.
If your staff won't ask you, or, they're the reasons, number one, you've got, that's the bad culture. So I'll pull it up and send it to you afterwards, because it's, here it is. Look, I posted it last week. 7 phrases your team should be saying, the litmus test for leadership. And let's check this. So, signs of a major problem. If your team is not confident enough to say the following, you're doing something massively wrong. I don't know. I made a mistake. I disagree. I have a concern. I have an idea. I need help. I need more time. Yeah. It's exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, because I've been in business a while, you learn this, that you need that sort of feedback. If you're not getting that sort of feedback, you're in trouble. Yeah. Mistakes are going to be made, and it's going to cost you.
No, spot on. Spot on. So what do you reckon has been your biggest learning since you've been a business owner?
Well, probably to not look, and it's one of the things about when you are a bit people-oriented, is you tend to believe everything a client tells you. or and you then try to apply the laws to their circumstance. And probably being a little less accepting of everything that's said to you by clients, and trying to discern, or being able to discern, what is truth from untruth, particularly in tax. It's I suppose, running the practice as a business rather than, being able to dissect what you do into it being a business, as opposed to something that is just purely and utterly personal relationships you build up with these people. Because for us to get, to pick up a new client, I can put ads. I can take a full-page ad in the Financial Review or the Sydney Morning Herald or Daily Telegraph, and I won't get one phone call, right? People don't change accountants based on an ad in a paper right? It's word of mouth, it's personal, right? So we have always gone to great lengths to, every relationship we've got is very important to us, because that's what breeds new work, over time. Doesn't happen overnight. It's years, but when you're in business for a long time, you're sort of trying to build that culture and that place. So, look, building, trying to build an environment where that's there. But it's, I suppose, look, knowing that line at which at some point you go, no, we're not crossing that line. And look, it doesn't happen, I'm happy to say, very often. But if I look back over my working life, there have been some real rogues that have come along and tried to take advantage of everybody, not just us, but everyone else they're working with, And look, discernment of people, being able to discern, that the people you're dealing with are fair dinkum, in the good old Australian vernacular. And that's who you want to work with. You want to work with people who are fair dinkum, and are wanting to try and, get ahead for themselves and that sort of thing, not just the, Johnny-come-latelys or those get-rich-quick geniuses that, are trying to do things. And you want genuine people too, and look, getting rid of the idiots as quick as you can is the best thing you can possibly do.
It's interesting though, when I talk to my clients, one of the things we get them to do early on is, we segment their client base, and we look at, everything from profitability through to, profitability clients, and are they easy to deal with? We want to deal with them, etc. And when I suggest to my clients that they should sack some of their clients, it's always a very interesting conversation. But I've got the no dickheads rule in my practice. But it's interesting the point you made there, because if I can summarise, one of the things I talk about is that people don't buy coaches. They don't. They don't buy coaching. They don't buy an executive, CEO, founder, business coach. They buy coaches. They buy people.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Even though the aim behind this podcast series is very much a public interest type thing, in that it's the great learnings that we're generating out of these podcasts. The fact up to number 101 shows the if you think back behind the scenes for me doing this, part of this is actually people don't buy coaching, people buy coaches.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very interesting, mate. And look, your skills, when somebody is great at making, some widget, whatever it is, they're really good as engineers, they're good computer people, they're good, but it's the business skills stuff which is almost the biggest part of a business.
Yeah.
That's what so many people, look, us included, are not well trained up in. We've got a narrow focus on something, and it's not you're not going to survive with a narrow focus. You're going to die. If you're going to be in business today, the amount of just stuff you've got to be across, and I don't just mean technical, but the interpersonal stuff, the managing people, the managing client bases, managing, these are things that most of us have never heard of, and that's where the need for your services is so vital, because,
thank you.
You go to a university or a TAFE or whatever courses are on offer, and they're often narrow, but you need a broad, if you're going to be in business today, you need a broad base of knowledge, and you need someone that can bring, clarity into often very muddy areas that people have never had to deal with. I mean, just the employment law area today, for example, is pregnant with issues when you employ someone, and it's the law in just all areas of business is just, honestly, you can have a PhD in law and still not be across everything sufficiently to run a business these days.
So listen, I know your major challenge is finding staff, so I'm going to ask you to skip over that. What, apart from staff, what are your main challenges in the business now and going forward?
Look, in for our clientele that are in that private business ownership area, right? The banks are a problem, and look, if you've got someone in business and their sales graph is going up at a 45-degree angle, in other words, they're really selling a lot of stuff and it's going out the door, their cash at bank line is going at a 45 degrees in the other direction angle. So funding growth is a major, major issue if somebody's on a serious growth curve. The banks today, and really it's been this way since the GFC, so 0809, the banks today, for us to go and get a loan for a client is 3 months of hard work. Pre the GFC, and I know it's ancient history now, that was me ringing the client's banker, who I knew personally, a phone call. We'd go through it over the phone. I'd send him, a day or two later, some paper that sort of backed up everything I said. The loan was approved within a week. The funds were available in 2 weeks. Now it's 3 months for us to get clients, properly funded and set up. So growing businesses, the biggest challenge for them is funding for them, as privately owned, now look, there are a lot more players, lenders in the market these days, and that's a good thing. Thank God they're there. But look, funding of growth is a major problem. Technology is a major problem. It's the growth in technology and the speed of change that businesses are going through. Again, the little widget that they've spent the last 30 years making, tomorrow that widget's useless because it doesn't work with whatever the new thing is. That's that the pace of change is a problem, and it's just, balancing, that what you need to run a business and to take an idea or a product and commercialize it and get it to a point where it is actually producing profits for you. The kind of the roadblocks or the hurdles that you have to jump now in that process is just, we went back 30 years, they didn't have to worry about any of that stuff that they do today. So it's harder, today to be in business consistently for a long period and making profits and, being successful in that process. It's tougher. And look, I see the little clips every night, I'm sure, or every week or something, that all these little people that have started businesses out of thin air, and they're all of a sudden they're making gazillions, and they're shuffling decks on a computer, But yeah, I really wonder what the long-term impact is for those businesses. Some I'm sure will go on to be very, very successful, but for a lot of people, the core things in a society that needs to function and work, supplying those things into the society is what, will produce a business with some longevity, and anyone in business wants to have a business that's got some longevity, You don't want to, have something that's a 5-minute wonder. You want to sort of have, and look, that's hard yakka. It takes time, and it's hard work, and it is head down and tail up, to achieve that.
I mean, Steve Jobs said there's a great quote attributed to him, which was, "It's amazing how long it takes to have overnight success."
Spot on.
And Apple was a cracker, 25 years.
Yeah.
Before they launched the iPhone, and it's like that line behind me. Sorry. Yeah. It takes.
The share price was like that. It was sort of. It went nowhere. And then bang,
It's interesting. I talk a lot about, I have talked a lot in the past that CEO only does 3 things. Well, I now reckon it's 4 things. One is set strategy. understand the market, understand where your perfect future client is, put a product market fit together. Strategy. Secondly is getting the right people on board the business and building the right culture, because if you've got the right people, they'll make it happen for you.
Yeah.
Thirdly is having enough cash to pay for it, which is a very good point you just made.
Yeah.
And I've now thrown in a fourth thing, which is an understanding of technology, particularly with AI and what's happening this year.
Yeah.
And as Bill Gates says, he thinks this is one in his lifetime. There are two major things that have affected things: the internet and AI.
Yeah.
Think about where he's looking at it from.
Yeah.
And the changes, I see my clients, the clients who've grasped the opportunity of AI is phenomenal. How it's accelerating their businesses and not losing staff over it. It's just about training your team. It's training the staff to think differently, use the AI to accelerate what they're doing.
Yeah. Yes, fascinating, mate, isn't it? It really is. It's. I wanted to show you this just before I went. I don't know if you can.
Poetry of Curt Rendall.
Curt Rendall. Now, when Midnight Oil were in full bloom, I was their accountant for 25 years. Curt Rendall is an accountant in New York that we used to use for Midnight Oil's, USA. Travels and the like. Well, Bert was an accountant into the music, arts, entertainment industry, and he wrote this. I had to go and meet with him back in the day, and he gave me this book, and it's poetry that he has written for his clients. Right now, no one would ever think that an accountant would write poetry for their clients, and the clients are people like Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Luther Vandross, Alice Cooper, Faye Dunaway. Look, there's a list of them, right? And he would write this poetry that, like when you went into his offices, a pile of these sat in the reception area, right? If you went in, you could take one, right? And it's a bit old school, I know, but it was just, when I see you next, I'll give you a little read of this. It is just,
I didn't know about you and Midnight Oil.
Sorry?
In a past life when I was at school, I was a roadie for Midnight Oil.
Oh, really?
Because my best mate at school, Matt Herps, was Rob Herps, the drummer.
Robbie Herps' brother, yeah.
And when they were playing at places like Lanier Tavern, I was a roadie for them. Small world.
Oh, that's a very small world. Let me give you one very quick anecdote. Rob Herps was in my office one day, and he was telling me about this investment he was going to make, or a mate of his from South Africa had told him about investing in this mining venture in South Africa, right? And I said, Robbie, that is blue sky mining. Just don't, Anyway, 6 months goes by. The album Blue Sky Mining comes out, right? The manager, I'm talking to the manager one day, he says to me, do you realise you named that song in the album? I went, what? What do you mean? Right? I'd even forgotten the words that left my lips. It was just Anyway, so I have an album, not a CD, an album cover at home. Thanks for the title, mate. Rob Herps, right?
Fabulous.
Right? If you get a magnifying glass, look at the back of the album, look right down in the bottom corner, a very strong magnifying glass, you'll see my name just etched in.
Wow.
But I did say, is there a check to come with this? Is there royalties? No, I got an album cover signed. That's it.
That's good.
There you go. That's my claim to fame.
But to me, when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind and why?
That's a very good question, And it's interesting. The people that I thought perhaps were successful 20 years ago are different to the people that are successful, just in my little world anyway, today. But look, a lot of the big boys that we talk about, Gates, and we talk about others, I'm not such a fan of. I'm really not, and I'll tell you some stories when I had a meeting with the 2IC in the Department of Justice in the USA when I went over there on behalf of the federal government. I won't say this on public, but I will tell you privately.
This is a public podcast.
I know, but I won't say any more. But, there were certain people mentioned that...
I think you should leave it.
Look, to me, people that own their own businesses and that have had them running for a period of, for some time and have been successful, have adapted to change. That is inevitable in whatever field you're in, right? To me, they are the successful ones as far as I'm concerned. Because they haven't had big help from, whoever or patronage or, they've done it by the sweat of their brow, and their hard yakka and people like you helping them, they're the successful ones to me. Right? And I've got a dozen of them, that I could give you. No one to know their names, but to me, they're the successful people in life. They're the ones that I look up to, really.
That dozen you need to share this with and tell them you were talking about them.
Sorry, say again?
That dozen you need to share this part of the podcast with and tell them you were talking about them.
Yeah, I will. I will do that.
Love to hear it. Yeah. Apart from the Tax Act, are there any books or podcasts you'd recommend?
Well, one of my son-in-laws is now a first grade rugby league coach.
Yep.
I won't say which club, right? And
he's still at Penrith?
No.
Oh.
No, he's in Canterbury now. He has been a student. His library shelves are full of, like that book you alerted me to, that legacy book.
Oh, yeah.
Right? About the...
that's James Kerr, who was embedded with the All Blacks and wrote, he documented the values of the All Blacks.
Yeah. That, look, brilliant. My son-in-law has got literally a wall of those. He's reads everything, and every now and again he gets one that's really good, and he'll flick me a copy of it too. But that sort of material, which look, universities, don't teach. They don't. There's no formal education in this space. So what makes success happen? It's not even There's no subject called "Learn how to be successful in business" or something like that at any university that I'm aware of. It's certainly in Australia. Not even when you go up to master's level or even PhD level. It's so look, that sort of material, the stuff that you've told me so much about, but that sort of thing, like that legacy book, it just helps you to build foundations in your own mind, heart, so that it gives you something to stand on when you're confronted with something that you hadn't thought about before. You don't know whether to go left or right. But if you've got some foundational sort of principles, they can help guide you in the unexpected that happens these days almost daily to anyone in business. It's just constant. So building those foundations, mate, I just think is vitally important to the ultimate success of something in the long term, not just some one-hit wonder, but just, when you're building something for, your family, for your, it's you got to have something to stand on. And you can't get that sort of stuff anymore just from going and being a technical something in any of the chosen fields, So, mate, what you do and the information you impart to people helps put that foundation in, and that's critical to the long-term, health, wealth, etc., of families that that run businesses.
Thank you. So just confirming, that book was by James Curts called Legacy. It's a of principles of values. Well worth looking at. Can I also recommend, Curt, I wrote a blog some time ago. If you search my website for Kick to the Seagulls.
What is it? Kick to the Seagulls.
And you need to give it to your son-in-law. So it's a story about Ray Price and Jack Gibson.
Right.
Ray Price was arguably Australia's best ever dual rugby league and rugby union. And Jack Gibson was the coach of in the days when they won 3 premierships in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And I was listening to at my local rugby club where I live. They had Ray down to speak. Well, he was interviewed because he's an ex-chippy rugby league player.
Yeah, I know.
Now drives a bus on the Gold Coast, and he lives at Tweed. It's an absolute character. But he was asked 2 questions. One was about leadership. And the question he was asked was, who is the greatest leader you've ever had? And this is where it's relevant to your son-in-law. And he said, that'll be Jack Gibson. And then he was asked why. And he said, well, in those days, rugby league was sort of semi-professional. And Gibbo had this policy that if you didn't have a job outside rugby league or you weren't studying, he wouldn't let you play.
Oh, really?
Even in the grand final, if you didn't have a job or weren't studying, you were not allowed to play for Parramatta because he was worried about the future of the player than the instant.
Yeah.
And the piece was, and this is so what a great leadership culture perspective.
He created, and look at the results.
The second question was, what was your favourite memory of playing? And he said, that'll be with Gibbo as well, over the grand finals. And told this story about, and it's spot on strategy. This is, I coached this in my strategy.
Yeah.
In those days, the coach was on the sideline, and Gibbo's yelling at Ray Price, "Pricey, kick to the Seagulls! Kick to the Seagulls!" Swearing and carrying on. Price comes off at halftime. Coach, what are you talking about? And Gibbo says to him, "Pricey, if you kick to the Seagulls, there's no competition there."
And
think about that from a strategy perspective.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Against another company or another business.
Yeah.
Seagulls, go and kick out there. Whether your competition or not.
To have the perception, in a game, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, but it translates.
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, that's what this podcast is all about.
All right.
Seagulls.
Okay. Helping people to, Yeah, no, it's great stuff, mate.
People buy accountants, not accounting. People buy coaches, not coaching.
Yeah.
For my our listeners, it's the reason I've been a client of Curt for 20 years. So whenever Curt and I get on phone, thankfully he doesn't charge me by time.
I don't.
Last question. Any last piece of advice or parting words for an entrepreneur or business owner who's looking to grow?
Look, I think it's having a full appreciation for where you're at, what staff you've got, what strengths and weaknesses your business have got. I mean, to have a proper analysis of where you are, and what you can then handle, going forward, and an honest appraisal too. I think that's, look, I've had clients, and I'm sure you've known them too, where, some business owners have thought they're God's gift to the human race, and they're really not. But that's been their platform and thinking and the way they've treated everybody. And those businesses tend not to last long term. So, look, having look, this is where I find what you do so valuable is being able to go in and give people an honest appraisal of them and where they're at and to be able to call them up, It's like having a big brother that won't put up with the BS of the younger brother who thinks he's God's gift to the human race. You know what I mean? And look, it's not a sexy thing per se, but it's if you want to go on and have success and more success and grow, you've got to have a very honest understanding of who you are, where you're at, what your strengths, weaknesses are. Without that, the long-term success, I just don't think will be there. And I've looked over the years I've been in business and seen people, in all of those spaces. Those that fell, generally it was some failing within. Not always. Sometimes it's government decisions. It's, just the marketplace. But a big factor is, the ultimate success is the honesty of the people about themselves and where they're at, and being able to take advice, being able to accept the fact that they're not, brilliant at all things. They need help and are willing to ask for help. Those just very human, normal things are vital to the clients that I've had, that have been the most successful have been the ones that will take advice, will listen to others, and they then grow and they can dodge a lot of pain in their lives. But, sometimes those with the blinkers on don't see coming at them, and, it's, a lot of that's just, sort of basic common sense, but it's amazing how often people in business, and where they get a bit of success, where the ego becomes a problem, and they need someone like you in their life to go, oi.
Well, I would actually argue that, I would say, not necessarily, but like me, I think if I can rephrase the way you've answered that question, perhaps it's, obviously understanding where you stand, but reaching out for trusted advisors before the problem starts.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons, as I've said, I've used, and my family have used you for so long. And I think it's those business owners who realise that they don't know it all and surround themselves with this tribe of mentors, which is the way I describe it, early. They're the ones that are really going to grow and scale, I think, versus the ones who run into the brick wall and holy crap, only now.
Yeah, only now. But they could have avoided it or dodged the wall.
having that the wherewithal to surround themselves early, I think,
is vital. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. No, lovely to see your happy, smiling face on this.
And so much for our 25-minute podcast.
Yes. Well,
Listen, thank you. I always enjoy talking to you, and what a pleasant surprise it was for you to pop up on my calendar. And
for me too. It was great. Came through.
Yeah, and there's some fabulous gems in there. So thank you.
Pleasure, mate. And lovely to see you again.
Anybody that wants to surround themselves with a tribe of mentors, Curt Rendall, Director of Rendall Kelly Chartered Accountants, based in Parramatta in Sydney, but operates everywhere. I personally would highly recommend it.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in entrepreneur stories of scaling up. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "Be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalized advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email at jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.